Hi, everybody, and welcome to this week's episode of Lowdown on Low Code. Um, this is a really good one because I think we're going to go off the reservation a little bit with the topic. It's going to be a little bit away from our normal topics, but it is actually a really important topic for our audience to know and to understand. It's also a special episode for me because one of the things I get to do since like we're running the podcast, we get to do whatever we want is I get to bring my friends on, and my friends are really smart about what's going on in this industry. I've known them for a long time today at this point. So today we have a really special guest, Himanshu Arora from Rhino.AI. We'll let him introduce himself in just a moment. I'm here with my co-host for today, John Rymer. How are you, John?
I'm terrific, Rob. So glad to be here on the podcast. As you said, some really. I think we're going to get into some really important topics that sort of expand all of our understanding of the low code phenomenon.
Yeah. Yep.
So with that, Himanshu, the way we usually start is by asking our guests, "How did you get here?" You've got a long history in the industry. Here you are at Rhino.AI, which we'll learn We'll learn a little more about that in a minute. But how did you arrive in this wild, wacky world of low code? And just tell us about your background, please.
Sure. No, first things first, Rob and John, thank you for having me here. I've been listening to all of these podcasts and I've been following some of you guys for a long, long time. And what you guys bring to the table is amazing. So thank you for having me here and chatting about some of these conversations today. As for me, I am Himanshu, the CEO and Chief Growth Officer of Rhino.AI, a platform for going ahead and helping you do app generation and modernization. And that's a fundamental premise. And we'll talk more about it later. But for the journey as to how did I get here? So here's an interesting one. Around close to 25 years back, I was building cars in a welding shop in a shop floor in a car factory. That's where I started, right? And a couple of years of welding cars, you can imagine, with some of my shirts still having all those burn holes in it, setting up robots for actually getting that entire process started. That's where I started. At some point of time, I got bored out of the job and I need to do something else. I was a mechanical engineer at that time doing that work. So I decided to do my MBA back in those days. And that's when, during one of my MBA courses, I was working for a company. They were just starting on their SAP journey. So I went in there like, this looks cool. And I'm talking about early 2002 kind of time frame. Like, this looks really cool. So I did that SAP implementation. I was SAP consultant for a few years. And then I was like, this is boring. All I'm going to do is configure SAP, the same SAP sales and distribution day in and day out. The package doesn't change. It's the same data model underneath. I just have to keep on doing this forever. It was a hot market. So I said, I don't want to do this. My friend said, it's the hottest thing right now in the market. SAP is catching up. And you're saying you don't want to do this? And I'm like, it's boring. What do you want to do? I want to be changing every time I do a project. I want to be doing something different, a new domain, a new technology, something interesting, but with something that I can go and play with myself rather than standard ERP config. I was called crazy at that time, but that's exactly where my journey started. So got into BPM those days, BRMS those days, did a lot of those implementations, was like flying off to a different client every 4 or 5 months, doing a new project, new technology, from the Equalogic BPMs of the days to the Savions of the days, to the Lombardi of the days, right? Oracle BPMs, then to Pega, Appian, and then the journey continued, moved to case management, RPA, low code, no code. And here I am, close to 21 years in that space. Have probably worked with 95% of whatever exists in the low-code, no-code market today. But then again, while I was doing all of that stuff, over a period of time, I realized that the adoption is not really happening in my clients. Every single client that I was working with had more than one low code, no code platforms based on which department, business, or IT you spoke to. And nobody had more than 5, 6, 7, 8 applications built on that platform.
Mm-hmm.
And here I was sitting like, this is cool stuff. You guys should be like doing every single app. You have 1,000+ apps in your enterprise. And wherever I go, it's like 2 here and 5 here and 10 here. Why not? So I went to a client who had 300+ IBM BPM SharePoint FileNet based workflow applications. They had chosen Appian at that point of time as their platform. And I'm like, let's get this done. And they opened up a roadmap, which was 9 years. And I'm like, this is supposed to be low code, no code. Remember, it should be weeks, at max months. You're telling me a 9-year roadmap? And that's what ticked me off as to this is not the real promise of low code, no code. So how do I increase it adoption? So I did a lot of research, did some investments, did some figuring out, spoke to network, and chanced upon Rhino.AI, who was just starting to take some shape at that point of time, brought them into some of these clients of mine, tested that out, and they were able to go ahead and give me that acceleration that I was looking for. And then I said, this must be a fluke. You guys must have done something which is specific to this swim lane. Let me take you to another client and give you a random swim lane, like an Appway to a Kamunda, who knows Appway now, but they were able to still go ahead and give me good 50% acceleration in a couple of weeks. And I'm like, this is something going on right. So that's when the minds joined together around what I wanted to do was increase the adoption of low code, no code, what Rhino wanted to do as a platform. And then I joined the journey, Adam, as a founder and CEO. And that's how it all started.
I got to say, we have not had a guest on, Himanshu, who built cars to start. So well done. Rob, over to you.
So I'm sorry, I just have to comment on this. So I have a very good friend who I think actually listens to the podcast named Tom Wisheroff. And he spent his career doing data analytics at Chevron, and then he retired, and then he got pulled out of retirement to help build out data centers for Meta. He's always been in the data side. He started as a welder, so you're not unique. It's maybe we start looking at that welder community so a little more carefully. So so Himanshu, you mentioned sort of like what's going on at Rhino, right? So, when we first were made aware of you, our colleague Dave Marcus, really, really took an interest in finding out more about Rhino. Obviously, some of your investors that are public are pretty interesting. Some of the projects that you've been able to share with us are pretty interesting. All that being true, you guys are super stealthy, right? So kind of what led to this? What led to the formation of Rhino? You're new in the space. What was the impetus behind, turning this into a productized offering?
Sure. Yeah. So let me also talk about Adam and Harrison, some of the other founders, right? Adam is our CEO. They were actually running a services company focused on low code, no code in their past life. And they were pretty successful at it in the federal government. They were able to go ahead and get a very successful exit, couple of $100 million. They were able to grow that company too. They were the ServiceNow Federal Partner of the Year. They were the Appian Partner of the Year. So they knew that space along as well. Now, when it comes to, okay, the services company we have done, what's next? It's easy to build another services company, right? This time from commercial space or something else. But then when we all came together, we decided that we are going to do something different. We're going to automate our old jobs. That's what we decided, right? What's the next coolest thing that we can all come together and do? And we said, hey, we're going to automate our jobs. That's the new job that we're into. And that's why we decided to create this software platform where this software could provide all the IT consulting services that are needed in the app modernization as well as app generation market. So that was the fundamental concept of why we did what we did, coming from all of our backgrounds as a company.
Cool. John.
So there's some history here, Himanshu, in products that are designed to help companies move from something they already have, like there's a whole mainframe market, migrate off the mainframe, convert your COBOL to Java or whatever. There's a there's there's a lot of history there, and it I think it's fair to say that history is very checkered. There were a lot of there was a lot of over promising, and there was actually a hell of a lot more work that clients needed to do that they weren't really prepared for, and of course raise the expense and all that. So Rhino's the new kid in this history. What's different now, Hamachu? What exists in terms of knowledge or technology or other things that are going to make it much more that are going to allow folks to use Rhino to really generate the vast majority of the new applications they need.
Sure, John. Um, no, I think you're right. History has a lot of lessons, and we looked at a lot of those companies from a history perspective as well when we're designing. That's why we went back to some first principles to figure out the right product market fit in this entire ecosystem.
Mm-hmm.
The first hypothesis and the first principle that we started solving for is all the low code, no code platforms that you look at, assume that you're starting with a clean slate. Open up my designer, tell me what you do, or let's figure out what we want to do. And that's the starting point.
Mm-hmm.
That's not how enterprises work today. 90% of the time, enterprises today want to modernize, upgrade, make changes, enhancements, add new business capabilities to existing processes, existing business capabilities. A bank doing customer onboarding, even if you want to move it to low code, doesn't mean they don't onboard customers today. They do. That's how they run their business. So the first principle was nobody in the industry has solved for how do I take that enterprise context of what I have running today. It could be spread across 25 technologies and 40 applications, but I have this business capability and business process. So the first piece of the puzzle was how do I go ahead and do that? That's different. The second piece of the puzzle that we started solving was every low code vendor decides to go ahead and convert it into a technology semantics of their choice and a proprietary language of their choice,
Mm-hmm.
which means it becomes a black box to every single app owner inside. And then how you convert it is another black box at that point of time. And that leads to a lot of vendor lock-ins. Plus, it's not easy to represent an app with every single piece that they give into the puzzle, right? And that's where we solved for the second piece of the puzzle as to what does a universal application language look like, which is devoid of technology syntax, without worrying about, is this how I need to write sale? Or is this how I need to go ahead and represent this format? I don't care. Let business and IT come together with something which is a true representation of an application semantics, because an app is an app is an app. Doesn't make a difference. Today it's a Java-based app and tomorrow service. Doesn't make a difference. This is an app that the business needs to do to run their processes to be able to offer some business capabilities. And that was the second paradigm that we solved for with our unique proprietary patented universal application notation, which is the application semantics layer in between. The third piece of the puzzle was we quickly realized that companies which are going down one deep hole, for example, I can modernize mainframes.
Mm-hmm.
What if the owner of mainframes, IBM, comes up with a different Watson skill set, tool set to say, I know the best how to modernize mainframes, right? What do you do as a business, as a startup at that point of time? This is it. What if a Meta or Anthropic or AWS comes with a better language model that does that piece of the puzzle extremely well? So we decided, third part of the core principles, we're going to be playing church and state. We're going to be vendor neutral. And hence the platform we will create is going to ensure that you can seamlessly switch across technologies without Rhino being tied to a technology by itself. You want it to be in ServiceNow as well as in OutSystems. If you're doing analysis of alternatives or product evaluation, go. I can generate both as an example, right? And that was a core fundamental principle of the way we created some of this to ensure that we can stay in the market for long term and not just one dimension or industry force can take us out. Second, we are doing something which is different from where people struggle in the market. And third, we can still play nice with every single vendor. Because remember, each of these software vendors is going to be coming out with their own agents in their own worlds, which will say text to workflow, right? Okay, you want me to use your agent to convert to your technology? Sure, I can play nice with you. No big deal about it. But that's the core three things of John, why we did what we did with some differences, figuring out a product market fit that can be sold, adopted by clients, and then continuing to prove success with our customers and looking at traction and then pivoting.
One question that I have about this. Thank you for that, Himanshu. I wonder if another thing that's different is that if you're going to take an app that's built on, say, ServiceNow, and you want to move it to, say, Mendix or OutSystems. These low code products, particularly low code products, but even things like Salesforce, are based on domain specific languages. So there's a context that when you looked at the mainframe, Lord knows what the context was. And that made it so difficult to interpret that app. Is that important? An important piece as well, Himanshu?
Absolutely, John. Absolutely. These apps, the customer journeys that we are extracting and converting to UN are in the context, domain context of that particular journey or that particular functional business capability. They're not random apps by itself. So by design, we are not just saying, give me access to your app kingdom and I'll go scan and figure out everything. No, that you will never get the enterprise context because it's so sketchy over the last so many years that you have built. So we are working with the human in the loop at that point of time to say, work with me so that you can teach me the right context in the context of what you're trying to do, not everything under the sun. And you're absolutely right. That's exactly where UN also comes in. We are working with some of our partners to create what we call as business UNs, where we are saying, you know what, for a retail lending, an app to do retail lending looks like this, give or take. Why don't we take this to the market in a marketplace, go to every single bank and say, you choose a technology of your choice. I'm not going to force it down your path. We can sit down this UN, it's a visual editor in front. You can make changes to what's the contextual nuance in your landscape in a week or two or three. Press a button and 60-70% of it in the technology of your choice is done. Now I can get this transformation done in a weeks and months rather than years and years.
Right. Thank you. Rob, over to you.
Thank you, Himanshu. Thanks, John. So, guys, just a quick break here. So, first off, if we don't thank you enough for listening, thank you so much. We're always so gratified. We're always so flattered that you spend time listening to us. Maybe even a little surprised. And Lowdown on Low Code is brought to you by Analysis.tech. If you'd like to engage further with Analysis.tech, that's where to find us. Our domain name is our company name, Analysis.tech. Would ask you to kind of pop in and take a particular look at the research that's been generated of late. We've got research on the role of AI in low code versus traditional coding. And we've got some really good research around vendor lock-in, how to think about vendor lock-in in the context of low code and digital process automation. We've got some really interesting research that coalesces around AI and expectations around AI, whether those are overblown. And in the future, we're going to continue on with more research in the AI space, which eventually will lead to our evaluative research, about helping you to evaluate vendors in this space. There's going to be a research around effectiveness versus efficiency. That may seem like the same thing to you, but it really, really isn't, and it's an important thing for us to explore, and more work around the vendor landscape. So please visit analysis.tech, and thank you again for listening. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, tell your friends about us. So back to our regularly scheduled programming. Himanshu, I just mentioned we have some research. We have a pretty strong stance on the role of AI in low code. Obviously, there's emerging capabilities around the role of AI in traditional coding, a lot of which is showing up in the form of copilots today. You guys took a decision here to aim Rhino.AI, it seems, at a target of low-code platforms, any low-code platform of your choice, but didn't choose to aim it at necessarily generating traditional code. Can you give us the thinking behind that?
Sure, Rob. So when we started this company off, we were also looking at what some of our potential partners and customers were asking us to do. And that's where they were leading us down to the low-code market. All of us had a lot of good skill sets and experience in the low-code market, so it seemed like a pretty natural fit for us, right? And we continued to move that capability along. Remember, product market fit, the other thing that started helping out, there was no co-pilot for low-code, no-code market in the market, nor there is anybody creating that, right, from a hyperscaler. So we said, open-ended market, nobody plays in it. We have experience. We know exactly how to get it done. Let's get this done. So that's exactly how the journey evolved. Having said that, some more additional news, Rob. Next year, we are actually getting into the open source market because our customers are asking for it. We are working on it in the back end with some cloud native conversations, microservices-based architecture. Some of our existing customers with whom we have done some low-code, no-code work, they actually came to us and said, hey, more than X percentage of my app dev is open source. Why can't I use Rhino as the enterprise dev platform? Why do I only have to put it in the low-code, no-code swim lane? And we said, interesting. Would you be some of our pilot customers for the initial releases? And they agreed. And that's why we have started that path. We are building it, and we'll be launching it later part of this year or January.
Wow, we had a product announcement right here on Lowdown on Low Code, John. That's pretty cool. So let's pass over to you, John.
Yeah, so you mentioned UN, the Universal Notation that you guys have built, and you've also mentioned the concerns out there about lock-in. It's interesting. I see sort of a battle between low code and open source. It's very, very interesting. Open source being coding primarily. When we looked at the question, we just took a look, as Rob said, at the problem or the concern about lock-in with low code. And when we looked at that, the low code platforms do provide some entry points, some points of openness. But what you guys, I think, are the only ones, at least I could find, that provide a vendor neutral description of an app. And when you that technology, the universal notation, as you're calling it, would help folks who want to be able to move apps. Obviously, that's what you've been doing, which has been really, really difficult with, if not impossible, with low code. I'm curious about this. This technology could be really, really powerful. It is proprietary to you guys now. Where do you think you'll take it? Will it become, in fact, the UN of application descriptions?
No, absolutely, John. So we actually spent close to 1.5 to 2 years in building this UN. It was not an easy task, as you can imagine. But we had to come up with this so that in order to be vendor neutral by itself. And that's why we had to go file patents around it, get an IP around it, and so on and so forth. The idea is to keep on evolving UAN as we go through more and more of these modernizations, conversions, and generations by itself. And at some point of time, make it the world's real universal application language, such that businesses and software vendors can talk using a single language by itself. The technology semantics of what they provide as a software vendor could be hidden by Rhino underneath. And irrespective of whether you're talking in a customer onboarding or you're talking in a credit card collections, all of them would reside in a single interpretation with this UAN into a requirement warehouse, which could be just app semantics. Business can come in, update it along with IT all day long without a technology gun to their head to say, in this particular platform or technology, I do it this way. I don't care. So you have to call it a case versus a workflow versus something else in future, an agentic AI agent in future. I don't care how you call it from a runtime perspective, from a design time. This is the language that all applications should get designed in. And that will help us with interoperability as well across the world. Imagine a world for tomorrow where you're evaluating, let's say, a customer service application. Now, people and software vendors will continue to debate who is the best in that space. But I don't know who is the best. It's in the client's context who is the best. It's not just what the software vendors say. What if what if you define that application as part of that UAN and are able to see it in 3, 4, 5, 6 different platforms and then choose at that point of time based on the total cost of ownership what really is should be the case. Imagine the second line item where you have thousands of such workflows, right? And instead of buying a full-time ELA from just one vendor and paying millions and millions and tens of millions of dollars of license, even though some apps don't fit into that category or some of workflows shouldn't be there, like I saw an app, interview scheduling app, built in such a big low-code, no-code platform. And I'm like, yeah, sure. Why not? Right? And the total cost of ownership for that interview scheduling app was 850K per year. 850K per year. Can you imagine? Now, the question I was like, why? It's beyond, because this is the only tool that we have and we have been asked to use this tool. That's what it. Imagine a world devoid of some of those conversations, right? You can choose the right technology for the right fitment. That's the promise of what Rhino wants to bring to the table.
Awesome. Thank you. Rob, over to you.
So, Himanshu, I mentioned at the start for our audience that you and I go back a ways, and I've always been really keenly interested in your thoughts on different topics. So, for the audience, a lot of the things that I've explored over the years were seeds planted by Himanshu, and you planted one recently, right? In a conversation we had a couple of weeks ago. You made a statement that just sort of struck me, and it's kind of obvious, but I'm not the brightest bulb in the shop. So, you mentioned how low code is so focused on edge cases and new opportunities, right? Which is cool. That's great. Look, we want to light up the edge. That's important. But what about innovation around the things that our company's already doing? How do we bring these benefits of low code into the core of our business, which is already codified in some, to our colleague Francis Carden's credit? Why are we building our company around these things that are sitting in these old COBOL systems when we have these opportunities? Can you talk a little bit about that dynamic of bringing these things into the modern world and giving them the benefits of the low code world along with that, in addition to being able to light up those new edge cases?
No, absolutely, Rob. So when I was doing low code, no code in my previous life all day long, it was a very clear distinction. People were touching some of the deep apps, mission critical apps, only so much versus some of the wide edge cases. A lot. Everybody wanted to go play and what I've called in the past, build your own app, just like bring your own bottle to a restaurant, bring your own app to the app store, right? All they were doing was interview scheduling, right? Kind of edge use cases. Nobody was talking about the real stuff. Citizen developers were not enough. You needed a lot of IT intervention. IT governance was a major issue. Every time you wanted to talk about a massive mission critical app, just the timeline to make it happen from a modernization to get into low code was such a big, costly transformation process that the promise of low code started to fade away for those deep ones. That's exactly when Rhino came along and said, let's break up this problem into four building blocks. Block number one, what do you do today in your mission critical system? Is it bad? Is it good? Nobody was answering those questions. And that's why consulting firms like mine earlier were just making a lot of money and getting that piece of the puzzle for doing 3 months, 6 months, 9 months of only that piece of the puzzle. We said, what if? What if AI can do it to you? What if I can automate all of that discovery, assessment, and extraction for you? The first piece of the puzzle. The second piece of the puzzle was then if I know what I have to do, in the previous life, I didn't even know what I have to do because I was asking people, what do you do in this particular claims process? How many types of claim does it do? Which are LOBs are covered, right? Thousands of those questions. But now if I have it in front of me in a visual format that I can play with, whoa, the IT business collaboration goes through the roof right at that moment. Right at that moment. So that's the second thing that we started to focus on. What's the right way to do this collaboration with AI nudging you, coming back and saying, I analyze all of your apps. Looks like you are doing the same claim processing across these 6 applications. You might have built it in different lines of businesses to do different things. But when I look at the workflows, 80% of the steps looks the same.
Mm.
Human being in the loop, your decision. I'm not going to say override. Do you want to do something about it? But that was the second piece of the puzzle in which we started to create innovation and so on and so forth. The third piece of the puzzle was even with low code, there was a place where low code stopped and high code entered. Complex business calculations, rules, interest rate calculations, whatever not. People ended up writing JavaScript, sales scripts, some other scripts. You call it, different platforms call it different things, right? That's exactly was where we saw a lot of frustration happening, as well as people saying, if I anyways have to code, I might as well code. Why do I have to go through all of this pain? And that was the third piece of the puzzle, which we said, hey, it's breaking innovation because it's going back into deep IT territory and those agile cycles and sprint cycles and coming out of the business adoption and innovation territory. That's the third piece of the puzzle that we solved for with our software. So with Rhino, what we think that low code, no code can potentially move out of using AI in enterprise app gen and modernization context and not be limited to case summarization and text to workflow conversations that they are today, right? Now innovation can happen because you can tell UAN what to do. You can go ahead and say, I want to add these 3 database fields, columns. AI will automatically figure it or configure it for you. You can preview it across multiple technologies if needed. You can preview it across multiple architectural stacks if needed, right? You might decide, hey, you know what? It's a mission critical complex app. I need this to be in Pega, but my integration should be in Boomi. What then? In the traditional low code, no code world, it's like, I don't know how integration in Boomi works. A separate team, and that adds 2 more months to this entire puzzle. But with Rhino, nope. I can play across multiple architecture layers and start to generate all of them at the same time. Obviously, I'm not a magical button that will do everything 100% of time. But even if we can do 60, 70% acceleration, that's the promise that Rhino brings to the table. And that's where innovation happens.
That's great. Thank you. John?
So, looking ahead, I'm just thinking about the organization that uses Rhino and basically reconstitutes its core, the major parts of its core, in a low code context, in a low code platform or context. That would seem, Himanshu, to allow at least technologically, allow for very rapid evolution of those core apps in the same way that today they may do rapid evolution at the edges. Um, so I'm curious what you think about that. Technologically, it looks like the stage is set, but are there also organizational skills, uh, other non-technical factors that would enable that kind of a very, continuous improvement?
No, absolutely, John. As I've said in the past, organizations actually need more problem finders than
Mm.
AI assisted problem solvers.
Hmm. Love it.
Even with low code, no code, even if you've been able to modernize it to a new modern future state architecture with some of these platforms, it's to do with the mindset of innovation. It's to do with, do you really know your business that you can find out ways to improve it? Or is it you're relying on what the tool is providing you as some potential options to improve the journey, the customer journey, or the business process from an efficiency and effectiveness and customer experience, the 3E conversation drop in the past, right? If you know your business and if you have the mindset to improve those 3E factors, efficiency, effectiveness, and experience, you can do so much more with the low code, no code. But if that mindset and the problem finding lens to this conversation so that you can improve the threes is not there, low code tools are tools and they will do what they have been made to do. But those are two things that I would say: the mindset, the problem finding skill set, and the trainings that need to be driven. And not as if you take your process, throw it to ChatGPT and say, tell me what the problem is. That will only take you so far.
Right. I love the fact that you include effectiveness in your ease. Um, we are coming to believe that effectiveness is going to rise in importance relative to efficiency going forward.
Absolutely.
We
Rob,
hope.
back over to you.
We
Thanks.
hope. Hey, folks, we started off here by saying, that Rhino was not, strictly a low code vendor, but was incredibly relevant to this conversation. So hopefully that's as clear as it seems to us that this is a really, really important vendor to know about as part of your low code strategy. With that, I just want to thank everybody for joining us again. Visit analysis.tech. If you want to know more about Rhino, you can reach out through Rhino.AI. Rhino.AI is their URL. Himanshu, thank you so much for coming on. It's always a pleasure to spend time with you.
Thank you, Rob. Thank you, John, for having me here. And it was amazing talking to you as always. And looking forward to more collaboration. Thank you.
Hope so.
Thank you,
Hope so.
Himanshu.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.